get wrecked in this series because this guy is no slouch and we are loaded in. So in the top left, we have the red Terran player representing Team Liquid. He is Kelazhur.
And his opponent, spawning down to the bottom right for Storm Gaming, it is SpeCial.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Does that sound crazy? If it's at the point where SpeCial is gonna start losing to these other players, then Kelazhur, if he's maintained his level, then he should have a much better chance of winning just this match alone.
Yeah. Now I will say that Eggs actually showed up big. It wasn't as though SpeCial, like phoned it in. I mean, I'm sure he didn't take it as seriously as we're used to seeing him taking other matches against other players, but Eggs showed up in a big way. He looked really strong in that series, and particularly even in that game 2 or game 1. One of the games, basically, like, he just got a ton of creep spread, and it felt like SpeCial didn't really do too much to him. But in game 3, Eggs really fought his way back into the game. It was an impressive showing from the Colombian Zerg players. So as much as I would agree with you on that, I would also say that I actually don't think it's necessarily that scary for SpeCial yet. But we're gonna have to see. I think this first game will be a really good indication of how he's looking.
And that I 100% agree with. We got to see Kelazhur play a little TVZ action yesterday. He had a 2-0 victory over Cham. But frankly speaking, it kind of just felt like Cham was having an off day. Kelazhur was able to get a catastrophic amount of damage done early on and then kind of coasted through the rest of both maps. So I am interested to see how he will stack up against the competition, because the other player in his group that he went against was Master, who we don't really know a whole lot about, but kind of came in looking somewhat strong, made a couple of good moves, but couldn't quite edge it out himself. But I don't know that Kelazhur has truly been tested based on what I've seen of him in this season so far. This makes this a great matchup and a great litmus test, I suppose, for both him and SpeCial.
Yeah, I would say that's a perfect way of putting it, a little litmus test. I think both Kelazhur and SpeCial came into their series against the lesser known players of Latin America. Obviously, players in Latin America know them pretty well, but the lesser dominant players, and they kind of like didn't go in with a full everything on the table. But why don't you talk about this opener? Because that was some excitement right there.
Oh, this is right up my alley. I mean, he's going for a Magfield Cyclone opener, and I think that since he's expanding, it is a little odd to send the barracks all the way across the map. The Reapers are going to come in and poke him, and he will see that this is happening. It can be a bit of a tell for Kelazhur. If he sees this Magfield, he sees that it's researching, but he also does not see the barracks, you all kind of have to assume that he's going to send it right across at you. And this can be really awkward if you're on some other maps. You can't do it on this one, which I think is another reason why it's slightly questionable. You would be able to hit like a production building from the low ground, depending on the way that the ramp was done, and you could do some really funky stuff. But Magfield Accelerator is going to cause the Cyclone to kill an opposing Cyclone in three ticks instead of like 5 or 6 or something that it is. So it makes Cyclone v Cyclone impossible to win for Kelazhur. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. The only other side is he's got to wait a little bit longer for it still. You can easily poke down the bunker. It will cost a lot of money to try to repair the damage through that. And I think what he's going to wait for is Magfield to finish. And you want to try to manually target that Cyclone, because that's such an easy grab, and it would be so valuable for whatever the follow-up is, because it looks like it's going to be a medevac.
Yeah, it does look like that's what he wants to do. So okay, he is adding on more Cyclones right here. He's already.
That you want to lose the barracks, though. He's not gonna.
Oh,
well, he'll have to make another one when he takes his third if he wants an orbital. So that's. I don't know. He didn't get the. I thought he'd try to grab the Cyclone before the tank came out, but does not do so. The medevac will still allow him to elevator in and get around the tank, so this can still be a game-winning type of early poke, but he's not really trying to end it. He's taking the third on location. He doesn't want to push it too hard.
No, and I don't think there's a whole lot you can do once that tank is out there. Obviously, the medevac allows you to circumvent, as you were mentioning, and I mean, this feels like a This feels like a classic mech opener from SpeCial. He hasn't gotten his hyperflight rotors, which he loves to do with this play. Ooh, we will see the lock-on coming on in on both. It ends up being 1-for-1 on the Cyclones, but now he's going to actually trap this medevac. Oh my God. Wow, he got the Viking. Okay, that was very nice for SpeCial right there. That probably shouldn't have been able to happen. Very well done.
And he burns the auto turret energy off of the Raven, but 2 Cyclones is still not a cheap loss. Yeah. And that medevac is very hurt, and he's kind of, you can see he's a little bit antsy. He wants to do this follow-up despite the fact that his medevac has 20 hit points. So he's laying it on the line a little bit. If he lifts up, okay, I like to play for vision on the outside. What he might be able to do is lock on to the command center from the low ground after he gets his SCV. And if he doesn't get something over there to finish it and fly it away quickly and get awkward, but it might just barely be out of range. Ooh. But this is... He took damage there. He took damage.
Yeah.
3 more hits and that's dead with 2 Cyclones in it. Please no.
Yeah, especially with the investment into that early magfield accelerator. Like, it is so important that you get value with that over time. And losing that would not be an ideal situation. Now, he did stop at 4 Cyclones, so it's not like he went up to, 6 or 7 Cyclones or anything like that, but he definitely still needs to keep these 2 Cyclones alive at minimum, having lost the other 2 already. Scan comes in from Kelazhur and is going to see, yeah, okay, it's mech, cool. What do you make of this incredibly early turret from SpeCial?
So here's what I'm vibing from this game. And the Cyclone openers, when you go magfield and TVT, the primary function of it is you do want to deal some damage if you can, but it's actually more important to just make it impossible for your opponent to push you without stim, because Cyclones, they fall off really hard once the bio becomes a factor. You want to peel as you drag backwards across the map and make it a little bit annoying for your opponent to get their third. But the primary function of this, you see that everything is at home to defend. So you also know that you can do things like build your third base on location, get that sensor tower up a little bit earlier. Bio players feel like they get all the map control versus mech, but that doesn't always have to be the case. You don't have to, you can't start the game with these Marauder hit squads roaming around with concussive shells. So he gets a couple of extra Cyclones to reinforce this. And if there's no tanks on this side, this is the exact kind of play you want to do. You hit with that mag field, he takes half the health of the orbital away. And now he's going to go up into the main base. He can pick off some add-ons. He can actually cancel stim here. And this is a huge amount of firepower to take the wind out of the sails. Yes, it's kind of a one-way trip since the Vikings and Ravens are here, but imagine if you lock on. Yep, there you go. I don't like 2-on-1. I think he's got the DPS to go for 2 on that. But this is it's just so annoying to deal with, and cutting off the production of key structures. At the same time, Kelazhur's 1-1 is finishing. He has an armory lined up for it, but SpeCial, you don't want to drop on that. Cyclones died at 2 tank hits, no matter what. They suck against tanks. If you were able to lock onto a tank as it was sieging, and if you scan, you do outrange once it's already locked on. You outrange the tank, but that's like a very difficult thing to do because again, it's just 2 taps and you're done. But loading up Hellions for a drop. Look at the way that this game is played out. Kelazhur has not really been able to go across the map, and he's the bio player. You kind of flip the script on him a little bit with this type of aggressive style, and I love it personally.
Yeah, this is, it really answers the question of like how prepared SpeCial, or if he was going to use anything, well, special in this series. And he already comes out with a pretty nifty little build, pretty nifty little opener. Kelazhur is going to start trying to come across the map and get something done, but this is looking pretty difficult for him to do more than really just take the position outside of his opponent's potential 4th. But SpeCial's already got the other 4th.
Yeah, exactly. He's already got his 4th up. And there's a binary decision that has to be made here too, because if you're the bio player, you obviously want to have medevacs to heal up your stimming units, but at the same time, you need to have Vikings in order to win the air engagement. So SpeCial, he doesn't need to build anything other than Vikings because he's playing mech, and that takes away the choice. It just makes it easy for him to know what he needs to do to move the game forward in the direction that he wants to take it. These tanks cutting off a gas is really nice. But does Kelazhur? Well, okay, he has to know that there's the 4th base because he can see the sensor tower ring.
Well, that was something that was very unfortunate for SpeCial right there. The siege tank was in range of the supply depot, but not the siege tank itself. And the splash damage killed the siege tank of his opponent. I don't think I've ever seen something like that before. That was weird.
That is some hardcore gaming happening in that exact moment. He is able to inch forward a little bit to re-secure that Vespine Geyser, and now he's also taking the gas at that fourth base. So he's got a tremendous amount of resources coming in, and he has to decide, does he want to just go for a big tank Viking push as he's getting over that 165, 170 supply mark, or do we want to really slow this down, get a bunch more starports? And based on the fact that he's not getting the ship weapons, makes me believe he really is focused on the factory units, and thus won't want to give Kelazhur time to go into something like mass air with liberators or battle cruisers or anything. And we should see him try to hit that max out timing push. If nothing bad happens.
Yeah, exactly. He does have these missile turrets in preparation for this drop, so of course he's well prepared in that regard. He knows that it is always a risk. Basically, once you get past like the mid game of your opponent of the TVT, you really do have to be prepared for the potential of a doom drop. Just because repositioning that mech army is such a difficult and tedious task. We're going to see Kelazhur moving into the sensor tower, and he's just going to try and take position on this actual fourth base. But SpeCial responds pretty quickly. He should be able to prevent this from getting out of hand. And yeah, he already wins the little tank duel. Loses a couple. Oh my goodness! That last shot from Kelazhur killed 2 tanks with his own siege tank. Fifth base is going to get picked off by these Vikings for Kelazhur, so that's pretty nice.
Yeah, not being able to take that gold base. And this is something that we've been seeing out of like the Terran players and some of the Protoss as well, just trying to be more aggressive about the expands, but coming in, trying to drop some units on the backside. That planetary is in range to help soak and push this bio away. However, all the tanks are dead. SpeCial quite far ahead in terms of Viking count, 11-4. And our Mech Terran has 93 SCVs. So he is making bank at this moment.
Oh, he is exceedingly wealthy right now. He's got his third hedge fund set up. He is really ready to go and invest in for the future. This is looking incredible right now for SpeCial. And you talked about, does he push out? Well, I think the decision was kind of made for him, where it's like, okay, you kind of just can now. Kelazhur just threw away a lot of stuff, and he is going to move forward. SpeCial, that is. Kelazhur is going to have to give up at least 2 bases, and he's going to try and initiate a base trade. But I don't even know if he has the units to do so.
And this is just where it gets so difficult. He has that air superiority, so he can continue to bully him, keep the vision, favoring his siege tanks and denying the power of anything that would try to be a counterattack. That third base is the softest spot since the army is no longer there and there's no planetary. I don't know that he needs to pull the SCVs, but he might just try to be time for the factories that are building more. And now everything is just going to try and dive onto these siege tanks. The Liberator can help clean the SCVs off, but you got to target fire down the bio. He actually did do a little self-report damage there, and I feel like if he had the transformation servos, could have brought those Vikings into the fight a little bit sooner too. I don't think he knows about that north center base, does he?
I don't think so, because that should have been SpeCial's plan of attack. SpeCial just got caught unsieged with like 9 or 10 siege tanks. There was only 1 tank that was actually sieged up there. You mentioned that Liberator helped out a lot and prevented that from being a complete and total rout, but he lost every single tank. Kelazhur was in the process of being forced to tap out right there, and that kind of gives him just a little bit of hope in this game. Now we can see, looking at the supplies, it is still an extremely tough situation for Kelazhur, but if there is any chance, it's off the back of that big catch on the unsieged tanks.
Yeah, and this army in the setup and the upgrades are still all great, grand, and wonderful for him. But that's just like comes back to a little bit of our conversation about overextending and recognizing when you've done enough damage and it's time to either check for an outside base like that, but pushing into the player who has, they've grabbed everything just to try and survive. That's always going to be the hardest time to finish somebody off. So play around the base, play around the bases, cut off what's outside, and he does still have the 2 planetary expansions. He did not get to the natural of SpeCial, so all he really needs to do, reseed the third, get some SCVs onto that 4th base, and defend the counterattack from Kelazhur, and that's it. GG, SpeCial, taking the dub in game 1.
looking solid with that mech play. Well done right there from Juanito. A lot of Doritos going to be coming down to the chat, I'm sure, in response to that one. Well played from him. And he just looked comfy. He looked very much in control of that game for the vast majority of it, despite, like you said, it being bio versus mech. You're usually used to the bio player being the one who gets to call the shots. That was not what happened in that game.
Yeah, look, every step of that process, that is a build that I think that's one of the best builds that you can do in TVT. The Magfield Cyclone opener gives you a lot of versatility. If you get hit by some sort of early attack, the skill ceiling for control on that unit is just so high. You can deal with a lot of different types of early aggression. You can pick off drops. It's all about the micro. And if you're bad at micro, then maybe it's not so good. But special, he clearly knew what he was doing. He was able to not only move out early on and get the contain on his opponent, but he could build his third base on location. As a mech player, he was a base ahead of the bio player. That's something that you can only do when the guy who he can't really play the game until stim is done. And then you kill his stim. Like, it doesn't get much worse than that. Textbook TVT mech build from special. That's really all I have to say. There's just not a lot to add there. If you're Kelazhur, you obviously don't want your stim to get hit early, but your siege tanks, while they're good against the Cyclones, you can't anticipate that medevac. Usually it would be a Raven that would be easier to deal with. Not the case this time.
Yeah, and great decision from special to recognize, like, once he got down there, he's like, okay, biggest, juiciest target, stim, obviously. And, you know, that's very easy to make that decision. But it's still, you look at a Viking, when you have Magfield, you look at maybe a command center or a third command center, you're like, ooh, those are juicy targets. But no, he recognizes that, yes, stim is the juiciest plum of them all, plucks it off the tree, and it puts him into a great spot from there.
Yes, he does. Yes, it does. And we go into game 2 now. We load into inside and out. This is a best of 5. We just want to remind everybody as we get into it. So we'll need to win the 2 more games to close it out. This guy is going to need to take 3, however. In the Northeast, we have the Red Terran from Team Liquid. He's Kelazhur.
And his opponent spawning down on the bottom left. For Storm Gaming, it's special. This is 2 games in a row now where he's opening up with a gas first. And as well, he puts the depot in a location where okay, he kind of throws it off with the barracks, but if you were to just check the ramp as a scouting Terran, I don't think you would ever do that. I think you'd always check all the way in. But if you just check the ramp for like a depot and that was your read as to whether it was going to be Proxy 2 Rax Reaper or something like that, could throw your opponent off. Other than that, are there any reasons to put it next to the gas?
Just wants to be fast. Just wants to be fast with it. You know, it's just that when that SCV finishes and you immediately have the money to build that depot, he doesn't want to send it over to the ramp. And I don't know that it really matters a whole lot. Having the depot on the ramp specifically is good against certain types of cheese builds. So if somebody's going to proxy Marine SCV all in you, it's better to have the wall than to just let them come up and bring the SCVs and get a surround on you, you know, or start building bunkers. If you're up against a Marauder rush, kind of a similar thing. It does sometimes depend, because if you scout it and you put a bunker up, then it's hard to get around the bunker, of course, and then there's nothing to pick off from the low ground, which some people will do with a Marauder proxy. But I don't think that special feels the need to worry about that. The strongest cheese in TVT that people really like to do a lot is the Proxy Reaper, but the only thing that shuts that down is just the fact that everybody's been getting hit by it 50 times a day when they ladder. So you have a pretty good amount of experience against it. So the Reaper immediately goes to check, and having everything tucked into your main base does actually help with dealing with that, because your ramp in the main isn't really in play against that type of strategy.
Yeah, that is certainly true. There's a lot of things that don't come into play in this matchup for, you know, having to deal with run bys, etc. Obviously, Zerglings aren't a thing. Zealots are not a thing. There's just no melee unit that Terran actually has besides the SCV. And like you said, that's a very specific cheese. I think pretty much dedicated to the the NA ladder more so than anything else. We do see something a little bit interesting, though, was a 1 Rax expand beyond this with the high ground and no scout, and now a very interesting thing, which is the Marauder.
This build's gotten a little bit more popular. You see this one, this actually kind of becoming common on the ladder. You'll see like a 3 Marauder drop. They run the Hellions and the Reapers either into the natural, or the Reapers go up the ramp, or up the cliff rather, with the Marauders. Pulling SCVs against Marauders when they have medevac heal, like the medevac pretty much neutralizes the Reaper and the Hellions against the Marauder, because naturally they're pretty tough, but they lose because they get outnumbered. It's a very awkward build to play against, frankly speaking. You just don't have an obvious answer. And if you build a Cyclone, if the Marauder tags the Cyclone, and if nothing gets in between them, then you can pretty much almost always get that kill. So medevac juggling makes the lock-on a little harder to use too.
Yep, also true. You really need to tag the medevac with the Cyclone defensively for it to get the value that you're looking for. And then, even then, you have to be careful that you don't overcommit and lose the Cyclone by exposing it. So your best case scenario, assuming micro is good on both sides, is that you force the Cyclone back. Now, this is something very saw out of Kelazhur. He started a medevac and then cancels it for the Viking. The Viking is going to be handy about pushing this medevac back, achieves the same thing that Cyclone was going to be doing. Oh, that siege tank is sieging up a little bit late here. Nice spread on the Marauder, but a good grenade right here will connect on that Viking a little bit late to join the fight. But the defensive grenades out of Kelazhur looked like they were very handy. Actually, was that second grenade, was the Reaper already dead? Was that wasn't SpeCial's grenade, was it?
I'm not sure, but it kind of forced it a little bit there. The siege tank was perfectly placed. You don't want to have it towards the front against a strategy like this. The only vision that Kelazhur had of SpeCial's base from that early scouting phase was the tech lab barracks, which this early is a very easy assumption that it's going to be concussive shell Marauder. So that's why you keep the siege tank tucked back. SpeCial tried to force it, and I mean, he gambled and lost it all. So I don't think that he really got what he was looking for out of this start. The tech empower units are a little bit further ahead for Kelazhur as a result, having 3 tanks, having the Raven, the Vikings. Those are all really nice, even if the supply is not necessarily like perfectly even. So SpeCial, however, does have his 3rd command center going, and he's ready to transition back into a more normal game state.
Not before he does one last trick, one last sneaky bit of trickery with the single uncloaked Banshee. He's going to try and find something with this. Of course, the Viking is looking for maybe a Raven coming on in, could potentially be looking for that Banshee. But regardless, it is in the other spot, in the wrong side, as it were. Zoning that out, but still a little bit of a nuisance. This is still pretty decent for SpeCial, though, as long as he... Oh, wow, that's a big Hellion shot on those Marines. Pretty decent for SpeCial in terms of the worker count because he got that 1 Rax expand. Now the Banshee is going to come on in, and this is going to find quite a bit of damage here.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, too. Everybody builds Ravens. You pretty much have to in TVT. So why get Cloak? Just come in, be annoying, and then as soon as you think that your opponent is bringing their units back to deal with it, send the Banshee home. Or don't. It doesn't really matter. This won't be very useful past a couple minutes in the game anyway. So it's just a nice little touch there. And like you pointed out, that Hellion, it's 14 damage versus light, but I mean, when you hit 5 or 6 of the Marines, all of a sudden you're like, wow, yeah, Hellion just did 60 damage with 1 shot, and it feels a little bit tougher to try and force that 2-base push, because look at everything that SpeCial has now. Kelazhur's little move out would absolutely struggle against it. The biggest advantage he's got right now still is that siege tank count lead, because he had him going a little bit earlier. So it's 5 versus 3, but that's not really a significant enough of a lead. It's TVT, so it'll always come down to the control more than anything else.
Yeah, and we've got something very weird coming out of Kelazhur. He did not get a second engineering bay. SpeCial already has his double engie bay. He hasn't started up the upgrades yet, prioritizing Vikings. Oh, as I say that, cancels the Vikings, starts up the 1-1. Ooh, this would be really nice if he were to get the kill on that Raven. Doesn't get it, but he forces out the interference matrix, which is also big. Very big. Yeah, that is really nice.
Yeah, just that's an interference matrix you want for a tank, right? When we talk about the number of tanks versus number of tanks, it becomes a little more relevant when the interference matrix is at play, because obviously if you get the front ones, you can just sneak right up on them and pop them that way. Kind of reminiscent of that series we had earlier today, the TVT with Clem versus Milky Cow, where it was pretty much that exact scenario. He interference matrices on the front 3, And then at that point, you kill those 3 tanks, and then it was like 7 tanks versus 2. What are you going to do? So...
yeah, and now we've got a little drop coming into the main base of Kelazhur. SpeCial, man, he is winning like every miniature minor skirmish. It feels like he heard my comments and took them to heart and said, no, Latin America still belongs to me, Steadfast, don't you worry, because he is now getting a ton of damage done with this drop in the main base. SCVs being pulled into fight. Medevac healed Marines is never a good time, even without the stim. The Vikings actually landing, which means they won't kill the Medevac right away. And he's able to go to the natural. Oh, he wants that Raven. Not going to get it. Good job from Kelazhur to keep that alive. Still, that's a very successful drop.
Yeah, it's so funny that TVT works that way, that the Raven is possibly the most important unit in your army, but there's no normal setup that really allows you to get more than that 1 or 2. And sometimes people build more, but then it just ends up cutting into everything else. So they're a unit that you want to generate endless value from, kind of like a swarm host, rather than building a million of them and losing them over and over again.
Yeah, they're definitely units you want to retain desperately if you can. SpeCial going to set up here just before the sensor tower gets set up. Kelazhur was not able to be in position. This is looking unpleasant for Kelazhur at best. Ooh, he is going to drop a couple of interference matrices. Counter auto turret drop coming on in here. Actually going very poorly right there for SpeCial. He loses all of them. One of his Ravens falls. Unfortunately for Kelazhur, though, it looks like he miscalculated. His tanks are not actually in range of SpeCial's tanks. So those 2 interference matrices that Kelazhur threw out didn't actually do anything.
Yeah. Kind of interesting, too, that he was in a nice spot to be able to deny the gas and hit the command center. But he's like, okay, I got to step back. And this does get a little dangerous because, yeah, as those tanks move forward, I don't really feel like there's much he can do. Denying the single gas feels nice, but I suppose Kelazhur isn't setting up for a surround, so it's not that bad. And now he gets a double medevac drop inside of his main base, and SpeCial continues to roll with the punches and just keep on trucking. Go, look at that, steps forward. As soon as he sees the Raven, he's like, yes, please let me get rid of that. And now you leave the 1 Marine, let it do its thing. The medevacs, you obviously would love to get away with them, but it just doesn't, that's not going to happen. So good amount of damage done. You trade 2 medevacs and Marines for some SCVs, a tank, a Viking or 2, and the Raven. You have to be happy. If you're SpeCial, that's like, okay, the Raven's dead, probably worth it.
Yeah, honestly, in the mid game, the 1 Raven alone is almost... It depends a lot on what it gets later, but like, let's say that Raven would have gotten, 2 more interference matrices, which would have led to 2 dead tanks and a big position being taken. That's obviously theoretical, but there is always potential that that's going to happen with a Raven in a mid-game TVT. So just removing that possibility is worth a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, indeed it is. So 2-2 lining up fairly even between both players. SpeCial is adding on additional starports already, as he has his 4th base already fairly well established, and now moves into probably just a lot of air units. All TVTs eventually condense into siege tanks and Vikings. The Marines can be really strong, but it requires good positioning, being able to catch units off guard, like if you jump them in the middle of the map. And of course, these big old drops, which, as we've mentioned a million times today, these maps are amazing for.
That they are a lot of areas to... Well, I mean, if you can set up with a Doom drop in the main base, it's always going to be a big thing, always going to be a nice move. No tanks in this one. It's just 3 medevacs full of Marines, and SpeCial is going to be trying to time this out with 2-2. Kelazhur, though, already has 3 missile turrets in position. He is going to be about as prepared for this as you can be. Oh, Scan only saw the 1 turret, so he will just boost right into this. He's going to be able to unload the majority of the Marines, though, and there's no tanks in place. This could end up doing a lot of damage. Oh, he wants that 1 engineering bay. He might get the other one.
Priorities, that he's going to be able to get 3-3, and now Kelazhur is going to have to rebuild both of his barracks. The Vikings are not here either, so the medevacs can get a good amount of healing in on this bio. He can play a little tappy toes and jump over to the natural, and Kelazhur is going to have to keep on stimming and chasing these units down.
That he is, and he didn't just deny 3-3, he actually denied +2 armor. And I mentioned this earlier. Oh wow, there's actually more damage coming in from SpeCial with these Marines. He's actually getting a ton of SCVs.
Wow. I thought he had his 3-3 started because I saw Special was getting his. That is huge. That 1 upgrade lead when it's Marines versus Marines, that is a lot. That's a pound of gold right there. I don't know how much that's worth anymore, but it still is what it is. Conducts electricity, great.
it's solid metal in that regard. Not going to make the best swords, but that's okay. 24 SCVs have fallen, and eventually, with Kelazhur not rebuilding that double engineering bay just yet, it will be 3-3 versus 2-1 on the Marines. And if Kelazhur ever takes a stand-up fight without a bunch of tanks covering his Marines, and it's just Marine versus Marine, SpeCial is going to be fighting as though there's a permanent anti-armor missile on his opponent's units.
Yeah, that's massive. That's absolutely massive. And the fact that he's got the Ravens up as well, right? He's got 3 of them now. He's building 2 more. And that anti-armor missile from the Raven, you know, a lot of people, they find about this for the first time every time that they hear about it, but it can send units into negative armor.
Yep.
So it's not like you can get around it by not researching armor upgrades. No, the Vikings are going to take bonus damage. They have -3 armor with that on them. So every attack is going to hit that much more painfully. Meanwhile, SpeCial is expanding to the northwest corner. Kelazhur's going to scan it. He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, first of all, you could have hid the command center, but you had to build the depot on the border just to troll me, like to take my attention away or something.
Yeah, he actually did that. The depot is just in range of the
he built it on the line. He's like, yo, I'm not touching you. He's like, what? He's like, I'm not. I'm right here. And that's bringing the mental game back into it. All right. That's why you got to keep that metal mental. It's what it's all about. Focus.
And then Kelazhur just kindly walks over, or like calmly walks over there with a couple of tanks and denies it. And SpeCial's like, oh yeah, you can do that.
I did make that kind of obvious, didn't I?
Curiouser and curiouser. How do you find out, I wonder?
If it isn't the consequences of my own actions.
Nice Liberator, by the way, forcing these tanks back a little bit. That will allow Kelazhur to secure one of these bases here. SpeCial does snipe it off, though, with his Vikings. Kelazhur does have a pretty significant Viking lead, and that is what he's focused on. He's focused on slowing down this game significantly. This is the map to do it on. Inside and Out is a map where it's very difficult to secure those side 6th, 5th, or even 6th bases. So it's not like SpeCial can massively out-expand Kelazhur. I like that he's chosen this style of response. Oh, wow. He's actually just going to move into these tanks with unsieged tanks of his own, and he will clean that up cost efficiently. I think that was, that was like 1 or 2 tanks for 2?
Yeah, that was very good. Very good move. I mean, you have to recognize that your opponent, if he can't break you, he's going to try to apply pressure somewhere else. And not allowing him to leave to like build a mini base outside of his base, that's probably a good thing. And on the other hand, it can be a little bit dangerous, of course, but he did scan, so he knew what he was up against. And SpeCial, he's clearly had great map control, great dominance. This map is being split in half. Fusion core coming out. I love to see it. Look, I'm just going to tell you the truth here. I know nobody ever believes me when I say this, Steadfast, but there's really nothing that can beat a maxed out army of battle cruisers. And if that's where SpeCial wants to take this game, it's going to be a wild ride, but he's got the money to do it. So I would like to see it.
Yeah, and he's getting the upgrades for the double armory upgrades as well. SpeCial is no stranger to big starport transitions. He is going to find a couple of tanks on their lonesome on the right side. He's going to be able to interference matrix those down. Drops another couple of them. We do have anti-armor missiles coming in from both sides. It looks like SpeCial does just barely not have enough. Like, Kelazhur is going to be able to push him back. However, there is one extra upgrade for SpeCial, but no, it's not going to be enough to actually break through and let him hold this position. So Kelazhur will drive him back for the moment, and Kelazhur's done a great job of holding his bases and not letting SpeCial actually break him. Like, I'm very impressed that Kelazhur has managed to kind of come back in this game, but okay, it looks like SpeCial says, nuh-uh, I'm not worried about the BCs. I want to win the air war and win it big. He just had 8 Vikings in production at a time for a moment.
Yeah, he should focus on taking air control while he can. I don't think you make that kind of transition until you can get 3-3 for air, because the bio will still be a problem. You know, you don't want to let Kelazhur just mass Marines to kill your fleet. So it turns into this back and forth dance, continuing to jockey for position. And it's what makes TVT such a tough and stressful matchup. You know, you just have so many different points that you'd like to attack, but because they've turned this map into a geometry test with the number of circles that are revealing each other's units, both of them are playing with like full vision of where each other's units are. So like if you just look at either player's vision, you just see everything moving around. So it makes it very, very difficult to find somewhere that you can push it through. And there we go. So 2-2 is starting to finish up for the air. Yamato is now being researched. And that should open things up a little bit, especially because SpeCial is well ahead on those air upgrades too.
That he is. Kelazhur's trying to get into them himself. He's also adding on more Ravens. Ravens can be extremely good against the BCs. That interference matrix shuts them down for an extended period of time. You can blink out of it in a funny way, but hold the phone. We are going to see an engagement coming on in here. SpeCial going to try and force the issue with a fair bit of bio. The Viking war in the skies is going back and forth. Looks like Kelazhur, I think, just barely. Oh man, it's so close. The missile turret is going to help out a little bit, but no SpeCial with the upgrade lead.
That range upgraded missile turret doing work, but not enough. Yeah. SpeCial just barely able to edge out the air war, and now he's going to continue to build Vikings behind us. He's getting that smart servos that he asked for in the previous game. This is getting wild right here. Yeah, and he's just got everything he needs. Transformation servos is a fantastic upgrade. Let those Vikings do jumping jacks very quickly. And then as that +3 comes through on the attack and the armor finishes up, I don't think that he needs to go battle cruisers anymore. Winning that air fight may have been enough for him. So, because he still has all of these resources, but Kelazhur now has his half of the map too. So it's not like there's much of a difference in terms of what's available. And Kelazhur, the only difference here is that he's lost about 4,000 resources more than his opponent.
Yeah, very bold move forward in there from SpeCial, and he ends up getting a pretty big bloody nose trying to force an issue that he really didn't need to force at that point. Something interesting, by the way, is how many Marines you go back into, how many that you rebuild after a big fight. And at one point, Kelazhur had 1 Marine on the map, but since then, he's really spruced his Marine count back up, and that's what kind of allowed him to jump that couple of tanks that SpeCial sent forward. It is worth noting that even though SpeCial is rebuilding a much higher quality army, he doesn't have the biggest bank, despite the fact that it's felt like he's been in control of this game for so long. But now it's 6 base to 6, and you will come down absolutely to that resources loss over time.
Yeah, thing is, inside and out is like choke point the map. So in TVT, choke points are like the absolute impossible to break through entrenched positions. And for Kelazhur's benefit, as I think that if there were a couple more avenues that SpeCial could have tried to move through, maybe he would have gotten something done earlier. But like even now, you have to ask yourself if he could jump up to that northwest spot again from here, or maybe he's worried about Kelazhur going to the southeast. I don't really know, but he's finishing up the air upgrades, and
I mean, Kelazhur never fired up his 2-2 for the air, so SpeCial's going to once again be in a situation where he's 3 upgrades ahead in a moment, and then it's going to be 4 upgrades ahead, maybe a minute from now, if the game lasts that long. Kelazhur, he's got a lot of very low bio units that are not going to survive very long. SpeCial just spamming out auto turrets to force the Vikings back, and even picks up a tank kill there. It feels like as the Raven cat. Oh my God, the paratroop drop.
There you go. Oh. There you go. Little carpet bomb drag over all the tanks, getting them to blow themselves up. Big oof right there for Kelazhur, as SpeCial may finally be able to gain a little bit of ground, or not. Also, I know some people were very concerned in the chat, so I just want to say after that sensor tower died, don't worry, SpeCial still has 4 left. And Kelazhur has 2 sensor towers. Someone was asking. We've got the answers.
With that little pickoff there in the middle, and, well, I mean, the little pickoff with the Vikings towards the end, and the big pickoff on 8 tanks for like 8 Marines. That's a deal you don't get at your local supermarket every day. So you gotta stock up on those deals. With that, it feels like SpeCial has taken kind of complete control of this game now.
Yeah, I think that he's been in a nice spot. And after that trade, it's actually evened out on resources lost. And because they both have all of the bases on the map, it does get very interesting.
Yeah.
They'll mine out without neither one of them should have too much of a lead on the other. Really, it's the upgrades that end up coming interesting towards that point. So 3-3 air versus 1-1, and he had Yamato. And I almost wonder if he should just try to get 1 or 2 out just as a distraction play, because we haven't really seen him be able to split up at all. It's just been this main focus on the siege line itself. But soon enough, the bases won't matter. There's literally nothing left to mine on the map other than what they've already taken. So, well, there you go. 2 more sensor towers, actually. Sensor tower update 2022. I've got you guys. It's got 5 now. Number 6 is on the way. And this is what needed to come next. Get rid of your SCVs. You should have enough orbitals to mule this game to heck and back. And he's going to try and dive on these Marines as the tanks try to reposition, and they all get kablooied. Oh, there it is. Just 1. I'll take it. Thank you, SpeCial. Thank you, Juanito. Love you, buddy.
And honestly, the one BC is actually pretty handy here. Just Yamatoing tanks is, I mean, it's a pretty nice move. It just, you slowly chip away at your opponent. You can Yamato Vikings potentially. You just keep it kind of behind the Viking army. Oh, as I say that, we are going to see a big engagement coming on in here. Kelazhur does eat a huge anti-armor missile, though. Despite getting what looked like maybe a trap on those Vikings, it is going to go handily in the favor of SpeCial. And now the air superiority, well, actually, no, it's still only 11-8. They just keep rebuilding.
Yeah. But at some point, things get a little bit funky. The Vikings not being upgraded definitely will end up being an awkward thing, because the battlecruiser is going to be very sturdy, very annoying. And, you know, SpeCial is somebody that is very familiar with that unit control. But just send it to the top left base. Just move command it all the way up and force your opponent to bring his army over there. And then you can try to attack on the right side. Or move your whole army away from where the tank line is, drag the Vikings and Marines, and then have, like you said, Yamato the siege tank on the other side, and then pick off a few, teleport home when you need to.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
it's the most powerful unit in the game for a reason. BCs, man, they're awesome.
And if you want to see more BC play, you can go to twitch.tv/Nathanius and find more BC play.
All I do is build battle cruisers. You know why? Because they're freaking awesome. And the Dorito
cool
cannon is going to heavily benefit them too. However, BC's armor getting shredded is definitely a scary thing to experience, but he's sturdy. He's got the strength. And keeping it with the army, well, your motto is available. So I'd like to see him use it if he's going to be over there.
Yeah. Use it every time it's off cooldown. Like, there is the teleport. It makes a ton of sense to always try and keep that off cooldown. But yeah. Yamato, it's like Midas in Dota 2. Like, you use it when it's available. It's going to be a good pickup in a game like this, where there's always going to be valuable units at the front line. Banshees.
Some people remember from way back when. Some people remember the days. I think it was in the early 1800s when battle cruisers, they had an energy bar and they could Yamato twice. But yeah, no, now it's on cooldown, so you might as well just burn it if you got it. And he kind of gets pushed back a little bit. But see, we're approaching that awkward moment where the map is completely mined out. So the orbitals are just for scans, and picking off a base is not really worth what it used to be, because both players are totally broke. So all you have to do is kill the other guy's army, and that's it. There's not really a whole lot of thinking about the next step anymore. Like, you just need to win the game right here, right now. And that's a great pickup on those Marines. Kelazhur, it's going to cost him a lot of money to replace him if he wants to.
Yeah, and once again, this kind of World War I trench warfare really dragging this game out here. SpeCial, I mean, he's got kind of center control a little bit. Neither player, oh, those are some big shots on those Marines. Oof, doesn't want to lose those. SCV's not going to be able to successfully sacrifice themselves to kill a tank. They will successfully sacrifice themselves, but Kelazhur, I mean, he actually can't even max out at this point. I don't even know if there's enough resources left on the map on his side to max out. I don't think there are. Yeah, no, not even close.
There's a few pennies in his third base still that are being mined, and That right side base has about maybe 1,000 minerals left. Top left base is at maybe like 1,500. So he could max out Marines. I think there's still a decent little bit of gas too, but this is like the last army they'll be able to put together. And the battle cruiser usage, I'm just gonna say it. I mean, just kind of moving it into all the Vikings and the Marines. Maybe not the best way to use it. But SpeCial is retaining more of that supply that he does have. So I guess the war of attrition is slowly going his way no matter what. Rest in Alfredo Fettuccini battle cruisers. You will be missed.
You know what? Kelazhur is focusing a lot more on the Vikings, and SpeCial has actually built a ton of Marines right now. It's 59 to 9 Marines, but there is a 9 Viking lead right now for Kelazhur, and that is going to be enough probably to make up for that armor disadvantage.
Here we
Kelazhur,
go!
though, can he hold on against this crazy move from SpeCial? Anti-armor missile is going to come on in, but it is not going to be enough to hold the line. The thing about World War I trench warfare, there's a lot of trench to cover, and SpeCial says, okay, well, I'll just attack with everything at one point. And he just busted through a lot of that. Was that worth it, though?
We are at the point where those tanks are not going to be easily rebuilt. He's going to try and rebuild tanks, but this is it represents a significant amount of the resources that are left in the game. So I think it's worth it because it's just so hard. The win condition of StarCraft is to destroy all the buildings, but obviously there's an army in the way. But neither one of these armies can really beat the other without trading almost too evenly. So that's a really good anti-armor missile to be able to get. He has that an upgrade advantage too. Trying to move the tanks forward, I think, is a little bit greedy, but he does get them there. And I think that SpeCial should be able to win the air battle, and that should clinch it for him as there are no Marines here.
There's no Marines for either of them.
That's a good land. Good move. It was a good move for Kelazhur to land his Vikings there, because I feel like if he just lets them chase, then it gets awkward. But he can't afford to send the Vikings deep because he doesn't have anything. And I don't even think that suiciding the SCVs makes sense. You should bring them with your force. They are your army now. Exactly.
SpeCial actually is like out of money, full stop. Like he is. Does he actually have any? Okay, he's got.
There are
like
400 minerals in his natural, by the way. There's 400 minerals in his natural.
And at the third, he's got like 1,500.
Yep. So he could have a little bit more money. He could have a little bit more money if he wanted. I'm sure at some point he's going to look around and be like, because, they do kind of stand out on the mini map. But this is where you go. This is where if I was Kelazhur, you go full psychopath mode and you scan him. You see that he still has minerals and drop mules on him from afar. That's what you do. Steal his money. Take away what little pennies are left.
That would
actually like you go over your friend's house and you dig under their couch for change. Like,
it's my couch now.
Finders keepers. This quarter is dated from 1945. I don't think that you've been missing it. It's been here a long time. What? That's not how it worked. Don't ask questions.
We are seeing Kelazhur actually taking a more even trade than you would ever expect. He's been down 3 upgrades this entire time, and it is still working out okay for him. Liberator is going to be picked off here. This is such a difficult decision point for both players on what to build.
He's only got 2 Vikings, though. I think.
Yeah.
He can't. I don't think he can build. He can't build anything else. Kelazhur is officially completely tapped out. There is nothing. There is no gas. Absolutely nothing at all. SpeCial is pretty much there. He does still have a couple. He still has like 1,000 resources between his third and his natural, but he may not even be aware of that. So he's only got to deal with 4 Marines. Oh,
there's SCVs.
He wants to drop the SCVs
by the way.
On the tanks. He wants to drop the SCVs on the tanks.
He's got 0 Marines. The thing is, SpeCial should win this from this position with the set piece maneuver, because he should be able to just slowly, methodically pick away at his opponent's tanks with the Ravens. And the fact that Kelazhur has to stay away from his opponent means he can't use his own Ravens. SpeCial should be able to slowly but surely win this game. Ooh, Kelazhur is going to come in, gets 1 tank, but he'll lose one of his own.
The units got baited! Hold position is a lifesaver here. That's all his Vikings gone now. And there it is, the SCV carpet bomb. Oh, look at him fist fight to the death. Let's go. Well,
Kelazhur is going to fight on to the last moment, but he knows it's all over. SpeCial.
33 minutes and the game ends with SCVs fighting auto turrets. Woo!
SpeCial looks like he just woke up from the weirdest dream he ever had. Just like, whoa, what was that?
Oh, well, what was that indeed?
It was the fever dream that is today.
That's my boy right there. He's staying hydrated. God bless you, SpeCial. What a game. I need a second. Wow. We're really getting the bangers today, aren't we?
Yeah. They're getting their value out of us, that is for sure. It's some good games, some long games, and I mean, Tropical Sacrifice gonna be another one here. The odds have to be insanely high that one of them proxy racks Reapers, right? Like it's got to be so high that one of them goes for it.
I want to say I wish, but I don't have to cast tomorrow, so that's okay. My voice is holding up reasonably well. We can have a normal game. I do think that SpeCial is probably going to win this 3-0 because that was like everything that could have been favorably set up for a turtle comeback in a TVT, given what happened in the first, let's say 15 minutes. Everything was lined up about as well as it possibly could have been for Kelazhur to claw his way back into the game. But not having the upgrades in TVT for the Vikings ends up being a factor. Because think about it this way. If you look at it and you say, well, wasn't he kind of even in spite of all of those things without the upgrades? Now ask yourself, if his Vikings did 10% more damage and took 10% less damage, do you think that Kelazhur would have barely lost with his Vikings, or perhaps he would have simply won with them? You know, these are the dangerous questions to ask. I know critical thinking is not really something we promote here on the internet, but I implore you to think about, do you think Kelazhur could have maybe won some of those fights a little more decisively? I think he had more Vikings in a lot of those phases, but they just didn't trade as well as they otherwise should have, I think.
Yeah, no, I certainly, there was a lot of times where even one more upgrade on the Vikings could have been impactful with how close so many of those fights were. But if it was absolute like parity, 3-3 versus 3-3, I think there's no doubt in my mind that it ends up going to game number 3 at 1-1. Like, I think with everything equivalent otherwise, like Kelazhur 100% wins that.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of other ways that things can kind of be impacted, but there's just so many choke points. It's not easy to get around your opponent because the map is so small. So only like 2 or 3 sensor towers reveal the entire equator of the map, which it's like naturally set up to be like that, and it's crazy. So Tropical Sacrifice should be fun, and yeah, I think we'll just take a second here while we're loading in. All good.
Yeah, it might take a little while here. Looks like one of the versions of the game has crashed. Who knows? Could have been anyone.
It could have been anybody, and thankfully it didn't happen during the game. So yeah. Nobody really needs to know or ever see any of that information. So I think that whoever probably crashed on the loading screen didn't mean to, and it's not that big of a deal. But it will take a second for the game to load in. I don't think that either of them will proxy, just because I feel like both of them have like started leaning away from that. And it is a best of 5. So if you're SpeCial and you've played this ridiculous series so far where you had a 30-minute match, then maybe you don't risk it on the cheese, because then that could easily turn this into a 30-minute game that he loses. And then he's got to do a whole other game where he's like, okay, do I try to just end it here, or do I finally sit back and just play my macro mode and just crush this guy? So I don't see SpeCial cheesing, and I think Kelazhur knows he won't beat SpeCial if he cheeses him. So that's kind of why I err on the side of most likely another macro game.
Chance we're going to see another macro game. It would feel kind of weird. It would feel kind of weird if there wasn't one. It's more like, after those frustrating games, do you think maybe we see something funky? But Kelazhur isn't the kind of player who goes for like proxy 2 racks Marauder, or anything wild like that. Like, I don't think we're going to see anything completely out of left field like that, which once again leaves us down to that Proxy 2-Rax Reaper, which is, as you said, it's so common that it's kind of figured out. Now, SpeCial is the kind of player that will go for like Proxy Racks, or he'll go for like one gas expands like Reaper FE. You know, that's the kind of thing that can get you exposed. That can definitely cause some issues, but
that's why that gas first. That's why like the double gas in TVT is so popular, because it's one of the only builds that can just backhand the Reaper cheese. It's not like a free win against it, but if you control decently and you're paying attention, and it sort of is. So you've got that. And as far as today's games goes, we've had a wonderful and fantastic and very long broadcast now. We have another match after this one as well. So this is a best of 5, and we're going to need to see not only who wins this one, but then it's going to be the ZVZ, which I have absolutely no idea. Eggs is not a player that I've really gotten to see play a lot, but his kind of jump up that we were discussing should be interesting, because Cham definitely struggled yesterday. So this could be a huge opportunity for Eggs. If SpeCial wins, they get that rematch in the semis, and that becomes possibly the highlight of the entire tournament.
That would be very cool. I would love to see something like that. We'll see if SpeCial comes in with a little something extra. If that is the case, you know, there's always the potential that after losing to a player that you don't expect to, that you come in with just the biggest killer instincts.
All right, and we are back into the lobby with everything rolling, and we are going to get into this third game and find out, is SpeCial going to close it out with the 3-0, or are we going to see Kelazhur strike back?
That we are. It is, well, it's going to be neat to see here. We've got the 2-0 lead for SpeCial. Can he close it out? Let's get into the game and find out together, as we have spawning up in the top right for Team Liquid, it is Kelazhur.
And his opponent in the bottom left, we have the blue Terran player. He is SpeCial. And well, it looks like we are going to get that proxy. So SpeCial looking like he wants to deliver a decisive strike in game number 3. I don't know where he's at these days. Is he in a time zone where he's like, okay, this is going a little bit long now. Let's turn up the heat.
He is, I believe he is living in South Korea right now, unless I'm mistaken. I could be wrong about that. I'm not entirely sure. But if he is, then I mean, it's like 6:15 a.m.
So he's already been burning the midnight oil then. I don't know. Yeah. He's probably just going to go back to the gym after this. Who am I kidding?
Yeah, he's been pumping iron hard. And I think this is going to be another proxy marauder here. He is the kind of player that will go for a proxy reaper and do exactly what you were describing before, which is like the fake out play. We'll see in a moment if it's that tech lab or if it is the Reaper. It is going to be that Reaper. Okay, so you talked about this a little bit before in a previous matchup between Milky Cow and Clem. And this really only works if your opponent scouts it but doesn't see the actual barracks. This could cause... Well, okay, now that he sees the factory, this cannot cause an overreaction anymore.
Yeah, and there's a couple ways to think about it too, because you see the factory, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the barracks is proxied, because it could have been like by the refinery if he didn't want to go in deep, for example. But he did check far enough to assume it. But it's just like that kind of cheeky SCV plus Reaper very early, and you're looking for the 1v1 against that first Reaper of your opponent, so that your SCV can deal that 5 damage or tank the first hit, and then your Reaper just wins, and then things get really, really, really disjointed. But now he's able to kill 3 SCVs, significantly delay the factory as his is about to finish up, and he has that Reaper in his own base that he's dealing with. So it's very important that Kelazhur was able to get a little punch in there, because he needs to make sure that when the second Reaper comes, this is where you get scared. It's going to be 1 Reaper He has a Hellion building, but it's against 2, and he's building a bunker next to that barrack. So if the attack moves, if he gets too close, that's going to end up getting really tricky. And all Kelazhur can really do is try to micro his Reaper on the other side of the map, except he's at a little bit greater risk. And even this Hellion doesn't necessarily bail him out if he's able to force the fight immediately, because a Reaper beats a Hellion 1 versus 1 just straight up. So having the 2v1 would be huge there as well.
Yeah, SpeCial is on now 3 Reapers. The Reaper of Kelazhur is going to try and come home in order to provide the stability to survive. And it's now 2 Reapers, 2 Hellions for Kelazhur, so he is going to be able to drive this back and stabilize at least a little bit. SpeCial did something very neat, by the way, on the other side of the map. Oh, actually, he's got to be careful. Does not want to lose these units. But at the same time, if he can outmaneuver this and jump up into the main base, no, he's going to get blocked. And in fact, might still end up getting run down. Nice grenade right there to zone Kelazhur out. But SpeCial did something very neat, where he actually dropped an emergency depot to full wall that Reaper out at his front door. That was a nice little play from SpeCial. Well done there. And it bought a little bit of time, prevented a little bit of extra damage. Oh, but now this is a little bit scary, actually, for SpeCial. Kelazhur, he's going to take position at the top of this ramp.
It's very awkward because the Cyclone on its own struggles a little bit. Okay, the wall is going to help tremendously there. So now it can just be those 3 Reapers versus the rest of them. But what's really curious is that instead of getting a starport, SpeCial built a second factory. So it's giving me a little like double Cyclone vibes, but that's just so uncommon to see at this level. I personally would love it. I would love to see that, but a very unorthodox strategy. So he can also just go into double tanks and take a 3rd base. Like he doesn't actually have to commit to Cyclones with this. He can just go up to his 4 and chill. But I feel like he might want to be a little more aggressive than that.
Yeah, I think when you go for the double factory play with this one, you're committing so many resources to that early Cyclone play that you really do want to get something done with that. And I think he might even go for a base snipe with this. Because if you get up to like 5 or 6 Megfield Accelerator Cyclones, and it looks like it is going to be 6, I mean, you kill structures just ridiculously fast. And if you can find a 3rd base that is undefended, that can be an incredible play. Oh, we are going to see an attempt to take out that Cyclone, but a brilliant hot pickup.
In that moment, you need to make sure that one Cyclone is locking onto the Cyclone and the other has to lock onto the medevac. But it's so greedy to try to get the double lock on the Cyclone because you're assuming that your opponent's not going to react in time to get the save. And that makes things really tough. Now the Reapers get the backstab for Kelazhur, and I don't see much there to deal with it. The SCVs do get pulled. Not necessarily the cleanest micro, though, on the other side, and loses the lock on as the medevac goes up the ramp. Very difficult, but there's not really enough units to actually fight against this. So the rallying Cyclone's going to be able to pick that one off. 2 of them over here are still very weak, but without a siege tank, oh, that medevac can be big pick. And he does manage to take out at least a few of the weakened Cyclones, but the rest of them getting over here. Here's what you do. You kill the SCVs as much as you can. If you can get a lock on the siege tank, you go for it. If you can get close enough to the tank, it won't really be able to do anything either. So there it is. It does get popped. But you don't try to focus just the command center until you have like maybe 4 or 5 Cyclones. It's better to turn off the auto lock and just kill the SCVs. And as soon as they get down to like 4 or 5, then 4 Cyclones will be easily able to kill the base.
Yeah, and he is just doing so much damage right now. It is literally just Cyclones for SpeCial, but he is looking extremely poised to just win the game with that. GG gets called, and SpeCial